Jet Set Radio or Jet Set Radio Future? This has been a debate amongst the community for decades. Which game is truly superior? That is the answer only a Jet Set Radio geek like myself can answer. I'm going to be pitting these two games up against each other in multiple categories, listing their strengths and their weaknesses. By the end, this video will finally put to rest this decade-long argument of which game out of the two is truly the best. To get the least important topic out of the way quickly, let's talk about the music for each game. Music is one of Jet Set Radio's most recognizable traits, and both games are jam-packed with absolute bangers. My favorites from the OG game are Miller Ball Breakers, Everybody Jump Around, Funky Radio, Recipe for the Perfect Afro, Improvise, and Just Got Wicked. My favorite songs in Future being Concept of Love, Technopathic, Rockin' the Mic, The Answer, Bach Fresh, Al 10, and I'm Not a Model. Future has remix variations of songs from the original game as well. There are some remixes I enjoy more than others, like I enjoyed the remixes of Let Mom Sleep, Sweet Soul Brother, and Grace and Glory in Future. However, I think the original game have better compositions of Rockin' On, Humming the Bassline, and Sneak Man. Both soundtracks also have their fair share of stinkers. In the original game, Mischievous Boy and Electric Toothbrush are overall boring, and OK House only gets worse after the 45-second mark. In Future, the Scrappy and Count Lachula are a bunch of gargled nonsense hitting my ears, and Baby T is disappointingly short to the point that it can't be fully enjoyed. If you thought I was going to mention Birthday Cake,
You're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong.
Birthday Cake is a banger, and I'm not arguing that. But anywho, it's Jet Set Radio music. Neither of these soundtracks are better or worse compared to each other, so they're both of the same quality in my ears. Nothing will ever get as bad as Jet Set Radio GBA soundtrack, which, dear God, make it stop. Now let's talk about aesthetics for both games. Jet Set Radio has always been praised for its stylistic, future-like, bright and colorful style, with a lot of erratic and wild designs that truly gives the series its identity and unique representation of Japanese culture. Jet Set Radio and Jet Set Radio Future may have been only 2 years apart, so you wouldn't think the jump between the two games wouldn't be that big in quality. However, it's the time frame and generation that these two games were released in that really shows their differences in direction. Jet Set Radio was released at the start of Y2K, and the only consoles around the time was Nintendo's N64, obviously the Dreamcast, and the PlayStation 1. The PlayStation 2 did come out, but it didn't have a lot of games on it at the time. Jet Set Radio is very bright, colorful, and cartoony, which look in line with a lot of platformers you see from Nintendo like Banjo-Tooie, or the style was in line with its fellow companions on the Dreamcast, Skies of Arcadia, and Power Stone 2. Jet Set Radio Future was released at the start of the new console generation. The PS2 was now set, the GameCube had just entered the scene, and Microsoft had come out with their latest console, with Future being at the forefront to be one of the Xbox's noticeable releases. We were still in that radical and totally tubular phase of wanting to be cool. We were also starting to lean more to things having a bit more grit to them, and being edgier in both tone and look. We weren't completely reaching the let's turn everything gray and ugly phase yet, but we were getting bolder. So, how well did both games' aesthetics show for what they were going for? With the way Jet Set Radio's level progression was structured, for the first chapter of the game we were only able to skate around through specific sections around each region of Tokyo, Shibuya, Kogane, and Benton-Jo. Then we also have the two Grind City levels of Bantam Street and Grind Square being smaller condensed levels. When you reach chapter 3 and you're able to see the full scope of the regions when they're all connected together, you get to really see what makes each region special. If there's one thing the original game absolutely trounces Future in, it's the NPC variety. Future has a few decent varied NPCs, but a lot of them are just recolors of other NPCs. And when piled up in a large group together, you really just see a lot of the same NPCs and it kinda gets lame looking at them. The original Jet Set Radio has a multitude of specific NPCs for each region of Tokyo. In Shibuya, you see a lot of city folks dressed in casual clothing, and this is where you'll also find most of the high school students. From a glance, they look like recolors, but there's a bit more to it, I think. Japanese high schools have 3 grade levels from first years, second years, and third years. You could probably make a guess that each color outfit of the uniform the girls are wearing represents each year they're in. Also, they have Gyru girls in this game. Future doesn't have anything of the sort. Benton Show has hostess girls, thugged out looking dudes with their jewelry and shirts open, businessmen and women, a dude that looks like Goji, a guy singing with a guitar, and salesmen with signs. Kogane Show has more elderly people, this is where all the cats and dogs are, has bums lying around, and they even have kids just running around enjoying life. My favorite is when we reach Grind City. We're in America, down in New York City, which, as a fellow New Yorker myself, I really love. We got NPCs here of all different ethnicities, white, black, Hispanic, and they're all in different sizes and shapes. It's also cool seeing how varied each NPCs are in these areas and brings out aspects of what makes each region special in their own right, which is something I think Future lacked in that department. It doesn't stop at the NPCs either. Even the Rokaku group and the Golden Rhino variations are more varied in the original game. I'm not gonna bring up the machines like the tank or the helicopters, but to run down the list, Future has the regular goons, the armored dudes, the Golden Rhino goons, the teddy bear guys, the claw guy, the pyromaniac, and Hayashi. The OG game has the regular Rokaku cops, the SWAT team, the parachute squad, the guard dogs, the Golden Rhino guys, the whip assassin, the electric assassin, the flying jetpack dude, the giant sumo guys, the pyromaniacs, the kamikaze dudes, the Golden Rhino stripper dancers, and of course, Onishima. The variety here is so much better. I think because things are more condensed and smaller in size, a lot of the shops and other small landmarks of each area are able to stand out. However, we can't just discredit Future for what part of its aesthetic really shines. Future in this case, with the world being bigger overall as expansions of sections from the original game, it both gains and loses detail. What it loses is in terms of varieties in its NPCs, and you'll see in some cases like in the Shibuya area that you're going to see a lot of the same shopping areas that sort of blend in with each other. Which makes sense since it's all in the same area, but it sort of makes the world feel bland at a first glance. What I think Future does amazingly with this world is the storytelling, because Future already has Goji taken over Tokyo. In the Kogane areas in Future, you see his influences all around with all of his industrial machines and what he's done to contaminate the water in Rokakudai and Kibugaoka. I didn't know before doing research that this machine at the bottom part of the sewers belongs to Rokaku. We also gotta bring up stuff like the rockets Rokaku owns in Kibugaoka, as well as the Doomsday Clock in both Rokakudai and in Kibugaoka. Speaking of, Rokakudai Heights, just like how DJK says, is an abandoned place forgotten in time. When you see the NPCs there, they're usually just sitting by themselves, or they're homeless. There are only a few people in Rokakudai, while if you go to Kibugaoka, that's the most populated Kogane area. The sewers, you see where all the contamination is, and you actually see what that contamination has mutated. Look at this lizard. He's a freak of nature. There's also a secret spot where you have to be really good at wall riding to see the top, to get a view of the outside of Kogane. The fortified residential zone is a bunker where people are just stuck in there and they have small groups rallying. All you see is a bunch of fans and other electric contraptions. You also see the results of when the Golden Rhinos crash down to stop the GGs from rescuing Yo-Yo. The Benton areas are the most active with people. 99th Street is the red light district and everyone is partying and trying to get into stores, but then there's the blackout area where it's just like two people just lying there like bums. Then there's the skyscraper district and Faro Park. At the bottom, we actually see the park and how it has all these Egyptian aesthetics as well as the main ride attraction being the spinning Pharaoh King. But when we reach up to the actual skyscrapers, all we see below us is death. But up by the skyscrapers is all this space stuff along with this sort of observatory. Sky Dinosaurian Square. This is easily the best area in the Jet Set Radio game. You're in a giant amusement park inspired by dinosaurian times. You're skating on a roller coaster track going down a dinosaur's mouth with a pterodactyl ride, volcanoes, gondolas, the ride that has those giant drops, and even a live show that people can watch. This is all happening above ground too, since we're still at the top of the skyscraper district. I absolutely love details like this so much. The original game gets a lot of praise for its brighter colors, really bringing out each level, and I could generally say that the original game is much nicer looking for it. However, Future's levels really bring out a nice aesthetic narrative together. People have criticized Future for looking a little drab, and yeah, it can definitely be drab looking, and its colors can make it age more than the original game. I don't think that's a completely bad thing though, especially in the context of the game. This is the world where Goji has won, and the GGs are trying to fight to take the streets back. Speaking of the GGs, it's always been a debate about which design of the characters are the best. People in the community have already decided what designs they prefer more. If you just take a quick gander at Just That Radio fan art, you're more than likely going to see the original designs. There are people who do draw the future designs, but they are very few in comparison to the majority who sticks to the OG designs when drawing Just Set Radio characters. Sega is no stranger to it either. Any representation of Jet Set Radio usually goes with the original designs, even with merch. Doesn't mean Future hasn't gotten the same amount of representation because Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing is entirely Future representation. However, it's clear that the majority of fans have more attachment to the original designs. Where I stand on the matter, I actually don't have a preference of which game has the better character design, because I like how both games took their approaches to fit both game styles. Of course, I have my preferences. I prefer how the main trio looks in Future more. I prefer how the Love Shockers and the Noise Tank designs look in the original game. I love Future DJKs just as much as I love the original DJK. I know a lot of people hate Future DJK's look, but I find it fascinating with how much more chilled he is in comparison to his more cartoony counterpart from the original game. Boogie is not ugly. Y'all are just mean. Boogie is Piranha, Piranha is Boogie. They're both beautiful, and there is something they do share.
Gotta know exactly who you are. Lord have mercy. We must stay focused, brothers. We must stay focused.
But anywho, the one thing Future has over the original game in this category, and this is something you can't really argue against, the story and the characterization. The original Jet Set Radio has a fairly simple plot, and Chapter 2 is really where all the interesting stuff is, with the introduction of the Golden Rhinos and why Cube and Combo came to Tokyo. But besides Combo, DJK, and Onishima to some extent, everyone else is practically a blank slate. Future took the liberty to give everyone speaking roles. Between each chapter, you are given the opportunity to actually talk to your fellow teammates about the current situation and get to see what they're thinking of. They're not deep or anything, but you get an idea of the characters' personalities. Some are a little more nuanced than others. DJK isn't just restricted to talking to you after every chapter, he's also your in-game navigator, giving the GGs the scoop of what's going on and giving general commentary during gameplay. He feels more involved with the world. This game also has Captain Hayashi, who is 10 times the better antagonist than Onishima. He is outlandishly deranged and it's amazing. And come on, Goji? Goji is the best character in this game, and the fact that he's voiced by Mario, of all characters, makes it even better. Is the story messy? No doubt about it. Is it more engaging overall? Most definitely. Future having more world building has helped fanfiction writers be able to create more stories because Future gave them the blueprints of how the characters would act. It even works for the OG variants of the characters. Folks writing comics or skits for Jet Set Radio take cues from what was established from Future, which really makes me worried that if we were able to get a new Jet Set Radio, all the personalities given to these characters would just disappear, and that would be disappointing. But that's a topic for another day. Now we're at the most essential part that will determine which game is better, the gameplay. Let's set the stage. Jet Set Radio is an arcade-styled action-adventure game with a bigger focus on racking up points to get the highest rank on each level. You do this by grinding, doing tricks, getting perfect combos during the graffiti minigames, how fast you complete levels in time given, how many cans you have, and how much health you have by the end, all to accomplish the Jet rank. Jet Set Radio Future is an open-world action-adventure game with a bigger emphasis on platforming. This game throws you in a big open world where you are given a linear task to complete in order to progress through the game's story. There's no time limit, and the goal is usually the same with spraying the graffiti spots in order to progress. You can take as much time as you want. A lot of game mechanics change to fit the new open world style of Future, from the graffiti mechanics to the movement. There's a lot of factors to take into account between these two games. While they share the same spirit, they are completely different beings. With so much to take into account, I decided to go on Twitter and ask people who have played both Jet Set Radio and Future, which game from a gameplay standpoint did they prefer more. Needless to say, more people participated in this thread than I thought, and I got a lot of interesting data from everyone. So I've separated each aspect of the game to have its own dedicated session. The original Jet Set Radio has a larger focus on building and keeping momentum. When you start moving, you start with a casual slow skating jog. With the press of a button, you're able to do a boost dash to give yourself a quick burst of speed on the ground. Doing a boost dash helps you gain enough momentum to move forward when performing a jump. This is also how you start building up speed when you land on grindable objects. From there, if you're able to keep the speed very high, whether it's through the grind rails or going down hills, you're able to perform tricks when you start jumping again. For those who prefer the control scheme in the original game, they feel that the momentum-based gameplay is much more rewarding. Seeing yourself be able to keep up all the speed you gained and be able to perform sequences like this, and you're able to keep your score up because you were able to keep consistent with your momentum and movement. It's like how those who like Sonic games have a more focus on momentum. When you go rolling down hills and then Sonic goes soaring when you reach an incline at the end, that's very satisfying. Characters also control the same, with the difference being how much health they have, how faster they can rack up scores, how much they gain from doing graffiti tags, and how many cans they can hold. The problem comes from the overall control when moving characters. Now when it comes to moving your character on the ground, it's not too bad. If you're not boost dashing, it's easy to move around and make turns on the ground. Turning takes a little while when you start boost dashing, and it is a little stiff when you're trying to move. The problem also comes when jumping. It's a lot like classic Castlevania jumps, where once you jump, you're committed to that jump and you barely have any control. Characters overall are heavy and weighted. Some people like the heavy weighted feel, while others feel that the characters are too clunky. Some folks feel they don't have much control over the character, especially when jumping. You use the boost dash a lot in this game to do big jumps to other platforms, and that momentum carry over a ton, and it can be annoying to put your character at a complete halt so you won't slip off. You jump a lot out of a boost dash too in order to travel faster on the ground. You do this a lot during races, and you can see the CPUs do it too. It is a clunky feeling for some that you have to heavily rely on boost dashing and jumping to have some decent movement. But momentum is a huge part of the game, so you feel like you have to do it. Jet Set Radio Future, being an open world game now, decided to go in a different direction in its controls. You move much faster in Future. When you start moving, you get a burst of speed for a second, and then you have a set speed that you stay on. I can't give an exact tell, but you're pretty much on par in speed, similar to a boost dash in the original game. The boost dash in Future is more like a super turbo, where you go really fast and you're hard to control, but you have the ability to stop at a dime at any time. Future adds a brand new mechanic where you do this sort of brake slide to slow yourself down, and you're given more control to make sharper turns. If you do a brake slide after a boost dash, you carry some of the speed from the boost dash to go really fast and still be able to make those sharp turns. There's a dedicated button now to turning backwards, which is really good because the method of trying to skate backwards in the original game was very stupid. Future has lessened its focus on momentum overall, especially when it comes to rail grinding. With the press of a button, you can now build up speed when grinding on rails. All you have to do is press the button at the right time. There's a different button press timing when you're skating backwards. This changes so much. No more having to depend on momentum to go fast on rails. You can make yourself go fast by doing tricks on the rails or using a boost dash. Future also adds the option to allow you to do more tricks in the air after the initial first trick in order to gain more points and prevent fall damage. Those who prefer the gameplay of Jet Set Radio Future say the main reason for it are the controls. The controls overall felt more fluid, much more comfortable to get used to, and people felt more in control of their characters. They enjoyed the overall speed being much faster in comparison to the original game thanks to the added options you're able to do both on the ground and while grinding. It feels much easier to do platforming in Future. You can even see from the changes in character stats that they have a bigger focus on movement. There are now stats for characters' accelerations, how much easier it is to both turn on the ground and in the air, and how easier characters can latch onto the rails, so you can pick the character you feel has the most comfortable movement for you. Those who prefer the original game's controls feel that Future's characters are much harder to control due to how naturally faster the game is. Also, I've noticed that most people prefer the spraying minigame from the original game than Future only restricting it to one button press. It's more from the feeling of spraying on the canvas and less of a gameplay thing, since Future doesn't really need the minigame for its style. They wanted to keep Future more fast paced, which you can tell from a lot of the graffitis being more relatively close to each other. When it comes to difficulty, I think I'd say the original game is a little better at this in comparison to Future. However, I wouldn't say there's particularly something wrong with Future's difficulty, and I will explain why. The way Jet Set Radio does its difficulty is through its levels and the threats you deal with. You start off with smaller levels, which are just sections of the entire level for the first chapter, with the threats of the Rokaka police getting more and more dangerous. The AI is fairly decent at catching you in their sights, and they're okay at trying to interrupt your progress, which is where you have to plan around how you do your routes to deal with as little trouble as possible. The taggers tags are filler and they're not that fun. I think they highlight the worst aspects of the controls, and the camera resetting after every time you spray is obnoxious and can really mess up your positioning. It's not even hard, it's just annoying. Chapter 2 and Chapter 3 is where we get more varied enemies that can really screw with your progression. The Golden Rhinos certainly have more competent AI. This is also where you take your knowledge from the previous levels and now make your way through the whole area put together. Levels like Grind Square and Fight or Flight, however, are when the game really starts being unfun. Whether it's constantly falling off Grind Square due to the stiff controls and the helicopters, or the obnoxious jetpack guys in Fight or Flight that just knows your location and is a constant combo destroyer when you're doing graffitis. Especially if you're trying to do all jet ranks, not fun. Despite those levels, I'd say the original game does its difficulty progression very well. In Future's case, this is probably because I've been playing this game for so long, so I don't know how first time players felt when they first played this game, so I'll try to best explain. Future is what I like to call Mickey Mouse difficulty, meaning this game is like baby easy to the point where I feel like it's hard to really fail in this game. I guess the only real difficulty would be navigating the levels, but the levels are generally linear enough to where you'll find your way eventually to get the rest of the graffiti. You could use the map, but it's messy looking. I'd say from chapter 1 to chapter 4, it starts off well. Chapter 1 eases you with the big linear circle and a giant square sandbox. Chapter 2 brings it up a little bit by bringing up platforming over pits, introducing its first level with a big focus on verticality, and a big sandbox that gives you varied ways to approach what route you want to take to finish your objective quicker. The sewers being your first real platforming challenge, and then chapter 4 is pretty much a culmination of all the platforming you've been doing up to this point, where you should be used to the controls of the game at this point. The skyscraper district being the hardest level to navigate by far, it is huge. After that though, the rest of the game is filler and all the minor stuff has been made significantly easier, for better and for worse. Chapter 5 is Deathball, and you already know how boring that is. Chapter 6 is the noise tank stuff, which is also incredibly boring. Chapter 8 is really just boss fights, and speaking of fights, this game certainly has boss fights. In Future, you actually can retaliate against the Rokaku group and fight back. They are pathetically easy. Just knock into them and spray them down. That's it. That's how you win against every horde and against the claw guy and the pyromaniac. Stuff like the tanks, the searchlights, the helicopters, and the fighter jets certainly try to stop you a little more, but they're overall whatever. The Terror Drone and the train fight are at least trying to be a little different, and they're certainly the most active. They're still pretty easy boss fights, but they're better than the rest. Tiger's Tag has been made simplified to where you just need to hold down the spray button, which is just an improvement overall, so I have no complaints. However, I will say that the AI in this game is stupid. Like, hilariously stupid. If you mess up their rhythm once and they just don't know how to react and redirect themselves, it's pretty hilarious to watch them just suffer. Yes, Jet Set Radio Future is overall too easy in terms of difficulty and is messy in terms of progression. However, here's why it's not completely a bad thing. One thing about Future that it achieves over the original is accessibility. There are some who actually like the fact that Future is as easy as it is, and it's not too strenuous. You can just lay back and just have a chill playthrough of Future because the game itself doesn't ask a lot out of you except for the bare minimum. DJK being more involved in this game as your navigator means he can give you tutorials during gameplay telling you what to do and where to go. And even if you somehow didn't pay attention to that, simply pausing the game and looking up will tell you what you need to do and where you need to go. You can go to Robo at any point in the garage and do your tutorials there. They added a lock-on system for enemies so you can always keep your track on them. Also, due to the open world style, you have a lot of time to mess around without having to worry about a timer. Future is very beginner friendly from start to finish, and I feel like you'll only get lost if you really just weren't paying attention. Not to say that there's anything wrong with the original game's difficulty, and it does teach you the basics you need to know. The tutorial is in a different mode altogether and is a rather lengthy and boring tutorial that you wouldn't really stick around long for. OG Jet Set Radio can be much harsher on first time players. I've seen it firsthand, and it could drive away some folks sometimes, and it could ask for a lot out of you, while Future just needs you to pay attention, read, and listen. Now I want to bring up some extra stuff that I think each game has over the other. In terms of post-game content, the original Jet Set Radio has a new game plus. You can replay the game again from the beginning with all the previously unlocked characters, and you can try them out on earlier levels that you couldn't before and get a chance to try out everyone in a single playthrough. Future's post-game is doing the test runs, which are just the extra missions from the original game, and you aim to get a jet rank on each area's challenge. Completing each challenge gives you an unlockable character. These are fairly boring, and in comparison, by the time you unlock the rival characters and such, the game is pretty much over. There's no new game plus in Future, which is a bummer, so you just have these extra characters as trophies and nothing more. The original Jet Set Radio having a new game plus is a godsend. It's hard to do any real challenge runs when it comes to the original Jet Set Radio, but with Future's open world setting, you're able to have a little fun with your next playthrough, such as the Slaughter Run, where you pretty much make it your goal to kill every character that's able to be killed, and then you can't use them for the rest of the game. It really spices up your playthroughs. So with everything in mind, the better game I would say between the original and Future is neither of them.
Really? That's what we've come to?
Now, I know this would be considered a cop-out to everyone, but hear me out on this. There are certainly some things each game has better over the other, and also some worse things, but I'd say the pros and cons don't outweigh each other to the point where there is simply a better game. If you're wondering which game I would prefer to play in general, it's gonna be Future for me. That doesn't mean I don't like the original game. I love it. I just find it more comfortable playing Future, and I like the open world style for a series like Jet Set Radio. It's all about preference at the end of the day for me, and I'd say that these two games are on equal grounds in terms of quality. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you leave a like and comment down below what you thought about it. And if you're interested in seeing more videos from me, make sure you hit the subscribe button and hit the bell icon to get a notification for my next upload. Also, go into my description, you can find my Twitters where you can follow me and catch up to what I'm doing IRL. Thank you all for watching, and take care.